Hello everyone, welcome back. In my last video, we have completed our draft application where we added some code in our base view and then in our projection view as well. Then we saw how we can create the new draft instance using the create modify statement, which will trigger whenever we will click on create button on the Fiori screen. And when we modify this particular draft which we have created, when we add some field or we add the customer value, each time the update operation was triggering. That was I was not able to show in the flow along with the flow, but we will try to see today how the update is triggering whenever we are adding some new field value or when we are changing the field value, and how this resume, prepare, activate and edit actions are working. We will try to edit the existing draft and we will try to save the data, and we will see each and every action how it is calling. For that, for each action we will add the additional implementation. Even though we will not write any code in those additional implementation, but we will add those additional implementation in our behavior definition and generate those method and put breakpoint there. So we will get to know when this each and every action is got called. If it is required, we can write code there as well, but as of now we want to see when these actions are calling when we are working with front end. So without wasting the time, let's jump into the system. First, what we will do, we will add the additional implementation for our each and every action in our behavior definition. So for that, what we have to do, for example, resume, I want to add the additional implementation. You have to write with additional implementation. Same goes with the edit as well. Same goes with the activate as well. And same goes with the discard as well. We can't do any additional implementation for the prepare. Obviously, prepare is just used for the whenever when we are calling this method, so we can call the validations which are available on the save. Apart from that, these actions, we have written the additional implementation. We are getting the warning you should generate those methods. So as soon as you write this one, the resume is not implemented. So what you have to do, you have to do Control+1 and it will ask you to implement all the method. So add all the methods and activate this one, Control+F3. What I will do, I will put the breakpoint in each and every method which we have added, so we can see when it is triggering. Obviously, whenever the activate action will trigger, after just activate action, the additional implementation will trigger. Then this additional method activate will trigger, and this method will trigger, this method will trigger, and this method will. Let me activate this also without doing Control+F3. Before that, I have to activate the behavior definition, Control+F3, and then I can activate this as well, Control+F. This is not required. Anyway, we are using the action, so those additional implementation will work. So let me go to my class again and let me do a Control+F3. It should activate, which is this method which I don't have breakpoint. Validate customer, I have breakpoint here itself, so that is the reason I don't have that. Set travel ID, I have breakpoint. Set open status, I have breakpoint. Calculate total price, I have. Anyway, actions I didn't trigger, so I don't have breakpoint on the actions. So I have almost all the places breakpoint which I have created. So let me see, this is the method. We have this one breakpoint pre-check. I just want to make sure the breakpoints are there. So we have everywhere breakpoint. Let me go to my front end application, and I have already opened the application. I just want to refresh this application. So whatever we have done, it will impact in our application. But as soon as I refresh, obviously it will read the data from the backend. So global authorization and instance authorization will be called when you click on go button. So if breakpoints are there, so in my case breakpoints are already there. Let me open this one. First it called the, you can see here red one. If you are not able to get global authorization, how I get to know which method? Either you can see from here or from here which method got called. You can see get global authorization method got triggered. If I do F8, Then instance authorization got triggered. If I do F8, then all the data got displayed. These are the authorization. Now what we will do, we will edit the existing entity. For that, I will open one of the existing entity called 4136. As soon as I click on 4136, it will call the global authorization. Let me do F8. It called the instance authorization. You can see the breakpoint is triggered here. F8. Then there is another debugger called, again it is checking the instance authorization, and you can see the data got displayed because we are reading the data multiple times from backend. So that is the reason those one for the feature control also. If you have defined some feature control, as of now I didn't define any feature control in my application. If you define the feature control, those also will be called along with the instance and global authorization. Let me click on edit button. So currently draft is not created. If you go to the draft table, I have already opened the draft table. If you refresh it, so only one draft is there, which is the existing draft. You would have seen the draft when I displayed the first list report page. All the travel was there. There was one draft already there. So apart from that draft, no draft is there. So now what I will do, as soon as you click on edit button, so as per our diagram, if you see, as soon as you click on the edit button, just prepare resume. If you have existing draft, then it will trigger. Otherwise what it will do, it will copy the data from the active instance. It will copy the data from the active instance which we have read from the database, and it will put in the edit draft instance, and edit action will be triggered. Obviously we have additional implementation for edit action, so those implementation we can see how it is triggering. Apart from that, for edit implementation, I have already shown you the flow, how it is working. Let me go up. A lot of things in couple of videos we did a lot of things. So one of them was the edit action also was there. This is the edit action, edit draft instance. So we have the edit draft, create, edit action. So you can see this is the edit flow. So edit flow, how it will trigger, as soon as I click on edit button, when the edit action will trigger, then it will check for global authorization. If you have instance authorization, these are the green which we have implemented some of them. If you implemented the feature control, that also will be called. Then in our case there is no draft is existing, so it will create the new draft. And if you have any additional implementation from the edit, that will be called, and the new draft instance will be created. This flow diagram will work as soon as you click on the edit button. So let me show you how it is working. Let me click on edit button. As soon as you click on edit button, the first method called, obviously authorization, global authorization method will be called. You can see global authorization got called. Then if you do F8, an instance authorization got called. If you have feature control, you have defined, that will be called, but in our case there is no feature control. If you do F8, it is directly calling the edit action. So it reached here. So we don't have any feature control, so it created the draft this time. And if you have some additional implementation, that is the calling, but still the draft instance is not exist as per my assumption. If I refresh this table, there is nothing is exist in this draft table, because the commit entity is not happen for this particular thing. So as soon as what you will do, if you do now edit action, currently we are in this state, and as soon as I will do F8, this commit entities will trigger and draft instance will be updated in the draft database table. So let me do that thing. Let me do, as of now we are in edit action, so let me do edit action additional implementation. Let me do F8, and once it is updated the draft, currently draft got updated. If I do refresh, it will read the data from the draft table. You can see the next entry got created here for 4136. I think 4136 only we are doing. Yeah, 4136. So 4136, the draft entry got created, and now it is after updating the draft, it is reading the data back from the draft table. So that is the reason the global and instance authorization will trigger again. And global authorization, instance authorization. two time it, why it got triggered, I think one for the active and one for the draft instance it got triggered. So now we came to here. So this is how this flow is working, edit instance is working. Now we will see, we saw the how create is working. Now this from active instance to edit instance we came. If you update something, now this update operation will be called. And how update is working, that also I have explained you in the flow. So let me go to the update flow. So that is below somewhere here. This is activate, optimize. So this is the update. So whenever you are updating, the runtime modify draft will trigger. Whenever you will update, so this flow will trigger. So let me update some value. A global authorization will trigger, check global feature control if you have. If you have pre-checks, in our case we have the pre-check on update, that will trigger, and pre-check that is on BO layer. Apart from that, if you stopped and working after some time, then the resume also trigger. In our case we are working, so resume ideally should not trigger. And if instance authorization, again two time instance authorization trigger, one time here, one time here. Feature control if you have defined, if you have modified draft instance, it will modify the draft instance. Then if you have determination, in our case we have determinations, two determinations are there, those will trigger, and then it will save the data in the draft instance. So as soon as you modify anything, suppose let me modify USA 1, we want to check the determinations and validations also, then you can modify the customer ID or something like that. For example, if I modify this 20 instead of 20, let me do 30 and click on enter. Then in backend, first global authorization got called, then pre-check update got called here. So global authorization we were having, then pre-check on update it got called from here. Here we don't have instance, but pre-check on update it got called. Okay, so let me do update. So we have one pre-check there, checking the as I told you in my last video, we are checking the agency against the incoming values, but I don't want to fail that particular method, so I commented my code. Let me do F8. Then instance authorization got called, so we reached here directly. Instance authorization, there is no resume got called because we are working still. I will be showing how resume will be called, that no need to worry. So we are in the now instance authorization got called. If you have instance feature control, that will be called, it will modify the draft, and then it will call the determinations also. Let me do F8. It called the determinations now. So we have the total price updated, so that is the reason total price determination got called. Let me do F8. This is internal actions on the determination, so let me remove breakpoint from the internal actions. Anyway, F8. So this is how after that we have saved the data in the database. And if you see in the front end, we updated 30, and if you see in the back end also, the value is updated 30. If you do refresh for the total price, let me double click on this. Currently it is 20. If I do refresh, it should be 30. You can see 30 in the draft table, not in active table. So this is how edit operation is working each time when update operations. We are talking about the update operations. Now I just want to show you, you updated the data. Now how the save is, how activate is working, that I want to show you. Once you updated the data in the draft, as soon as you click on save button, it will internally call prepare, then activate. When it will call the prepare, each time whenever it is calling the prepare, that time we have one customer validation. If you remember from the validate customer is there, that will be called for the travel. Each time whenever the prepare is calling, that time validate customer is calling. Otherwise validations always calls normally when you click on save at last in the save sequence, if you don't have draft scenario. But whenever the prepare will be called in draft scenario, that time validations are called generally. Now what I was explaining, so it will call the prepare action. If you are working after some time, it will call the resume actions also. Then it will activate the data once active instance, and it will discard the draft, existing draft. So discard also will be called, and then it will save the data in the activate. So that we will see how the activate is working, activate action is working, that we can see. That also I have shown you somewhere. modify draft. Before modify, I shown you how activate is working. So here somewhere, so activate actions, how it is working, that also I have shown you. For example, you can see in this, as soon you click on save button and activate action will be called. Then if you have some draft, the draft is already there, if you are working after some time, then resume will be called. Then prepare, inside the prepare we have the customer, validate customer, that will be called. And if you have numbering concept, then it will assign the new number. Here modify activate instance according to the draft instance, so it will be copy the draft data to activate data. And once it is done, it will discard the existing draft. You have something additional on discard, that will be called. Then the data will be saved in the main database table, and the entry will be removed from the draft table. So everything we will see now. So let me click on save button. I updated some value. Let me click on save button. The first method got called. Let me go to the this debug perspective from here. Okay, let me go debug perspective. Why it is showing like this? ABAP perspective and debug perspective. If something goes wrong and you are not able to see, you can right click on your debug perspective and you can see reset. So it will reset the perspective, debug perspective, and you can see the accurately. So it resetted the debug perspective. Now you can see the currently it called the activate method. So it called activate method means it directly came here. Oh, it called the activate action. It got additional implementation for activate. It got called. So it directly came here, called additional activate implementation. So let me do F8. What I did, if F8, that is the reason. I'm not sure. It called the discard as well. Why it called the discard? Because we have the discard also. Discard draft is there. Yeah, I think it got called from here, that activate additional implementation. You can see activate data active, and then it is calling the discard action to discard the draft. But it will not update immediately. It will do everything after the commit work here. So everything will be updated. Discard draft. In how internally discard draft is calling, it just remove the entries from the draft table. That also we'll see. Let me do F8. After the discard draft, it called the global authorization. So let me see the draft table. If I refresh it, since I discard the draft, the entry got removed from here, and now it is called again global authorization. I think this global authorization called from the save sequence. Everything is done from here. Everything is done from here, and we now active instance is updated, and now save sequence is triggering. During the save sequence, everything will call again global instance authorization, pre-checks, then final late save sequence will trigger. If you remember from my save sequence video which I created long back, that flow you can see and how it is calling, you can relate. Why I am showing this all the flows? Sometime you face some issue, conceptual issue, you can go through that path and you will get to know where the exactly issues are coming from. So on which method call what time. So in that way we can recollect those issues and we can work on those issues. Let me do F8. Now instance authorization is called. To do F8, now save sequence is called. In the save sequence, first it called the global authorization. Might be previously global and instance authorization because they are reading the data after deletion. That is the reason it got called. It got deleted or not for that. Get instance authorization got called, and I think data got saved. Okay, save sequence, anyway we don't have any breakpoint on save sequence. We don't have any methods called the late numbering or we don't have any check before modify. Those methods I didn't implemented any, so there is no breakpoint. And we have some validations which already called during our prepare phase, so that is the reason those are not calling during the save sequence again and again. So, and validation, since we didn't change the customer ID, obviously it will not call that those validation as well. If I would have changed the customer ID, it would have called during the prepare phase also. That also we can see if you want, or if you can debug and see how these all things are working. So what we did till now, So let me come back here into our main diagram. A lot of places it is there. So we created the edit draft, we activated the draft, we saw how the discard is working. From here, when you activating the data, it discarded the existing data from the draft table, and active table got updated. In active, you can see the data, it got updated. I don't want to show you active table, we already know it is updating correctly. Is same way, if you want to perform any action on any instance, either draft or active instance, it will be updated directly. You can call any actions, and read is always happening. Draft and active data, when we are clicking on the go button, that is already happening in backend. And if you want to see the delete, I will show you quickly delete operation on active instance. So what will happen, let me go to the my Chrome, come one step back, it will call the global and local instance, global authorization and instance authorization, because we are reading the data. So many times. Okay, and what I will do, which entry I have draft, let me see only the draft entries. On draft I can click, so it will show only my draft which is available in my system, and click on go button. Let me remove the breakpoint from at least global authorization. This is triggering every time global and instance authorization. Let me do F8, and I can see the draft data. So we have to assume that every time global and local authorization is triggering before doing any operation. So what I will do, I will select this entry, I will click on delete. It will not only delete the active instance of this table 4133 which have in active table, and it will delete from the draft table also. Draft table we already saw, we have this entry 4133, existing entry 4133 already available. It will call the discard as well. Let me click on delete button. It is asking you really want to delete. Before that, it already triggered the global and instance authorization. Yes, I want to delete, and I just don't want to show again and again. So you can see discard got called here. As soon as you do discard, it will remove the entry from this table, and active table entry also got deleted. You got the message that both the table active and draft instance both got deleted. And normal delete, how it works, you already know. So this is how the delete and the edit operations are working. So we saw everything. We saw how we can create the new draft. If you have existing draft, how we can edit them, and how we can create the existing draft, and how we can activate the draft, and how save sequence are triggering. Those all flow we can see in the system. Not only the theory, you can put the breakpoint, it will trigger in the same sequence. The most important thing, I got confused daytime. I just want to share with you guys, when I was working, this validate customer was triggering again and again. So I thought, why it is triggering again when I am modifying the customer value? Because generally validations will trigger during the save sequence when we click on save button. Since we have defined we have defined this validate customer inside the prepare, whenever the prepare action is triggering, that time this validation is triggering again and again, because we have defined this validation in this particular prepare. So that also one of the important thing daytime when I working, and I analyze this thing. So if you don't define this validate customer here, you modify and it validate some customer, it will be not validated in your draft, and when you click on save, that time only it will be validated. Since you have defined this validate customer here, whenever you are changing the customer value, that time itself it is validating, and whenever it is called the prepare action, that time it is calling this particular validate customer. In that way, I get to know that if you want to know when your prepare action is calling, you will get to know whenever the validate customer is calling without clicking on save button. I'm not clicking on save button. I know the validations only called once I click on the save button, and save sequence will trigger. Before that, if validate customer is triggered, means it triggered through this prepare action. So this is how we can analyze which action is called what time when I'm working with the front end. So this all the small things I get to know when I have analyzed this draft applications. With that, I can see we have completed this draft application. You can go through this, you can create your draft application, you can work with the child instance also. Child instance, it will work if you create the child instance, it will work same as how you are updating the existing data. You are updating the travel data now, travel data where I have updated the description. If you add some child instance, it will call same method whatever it is called for the when you updated description. In that way you can check those also. You can delete the child instance, delete the child instance, delete grand child instance. You can create the grand child instance. Those will be updated first in draft table until unless you will not click on the save button. Everything will work perfectly if you created applications like this. One more important thing whenever you're working with the draft, so make sure you see each time warnings also. You should not have any warning in your applications, then you will get to know, and if you use strict mode, then you will get to know automatically your application work smoothly as soon as you remove all the warnings which is available in your application. In my next video, I'm thinking that we lot of time we work with the ECC, we will create the SM30 kind of screen. So whenever we want to give some user one screen where he can maintain the entries. So whenever we create the table, we create the table maintenance generator and give them this particular TMG SM30 T code, so they can go and maintain the data. But in the Fiori, I want to give some this TMG like thing where they can edit the multiple entries from one screen. Till now, if you see the list report page, we can create the one entry. For that also I have to go inside and create one entry and come back. But user want to edit the data all together and he want to save data. So we need the multi-line edit kind of applications where we can edit all the entries together and click on save button, it will save in backend. So we can't, something we need like SM30 like thing. So for that we will, in next video and onwards, I think 2 video, we will create this SM30 like applications, and I will try to show you this application is very useful to replace the SM30 thing. With that, I have completed this draft application. Before going to next video, please like this video, share this video with others as well, subscribe this channel, write it down in comment section, whatever you are feeling. I might be missed some of the points because I'm also not sure what else we have to cover, but that once we explain these many things, I think you can take up those things easily. With that, thank you and happy learning.